broadcast of Learning Now TV.
Welcome to Learning Now TV, and I'm really pleased to announce that today we have a new presenter, and I'm thrilled to welcome Gemma Critchley to the show. So Gemma, take us through, what have we got today?
Thank you so much, Nigel. It's a real pleasure to be here. Today we've got a packed show. We've got David James talking about learning at the point of work. We've also got an amazing package celebrating International Women's Day. And we have a great case study from RPC, the law firm, talking about how they use artificial intelligence in learning.
So enjoy the show. David James is back, and he is the Chief Learning Strategist at Loop with 3 O's. I always add the 3 O's. And we're talking today about an incredibly important and growing topic, which is learning at the point of work. Everyone is talking about it, and we've got the expert today. David, learning at the point of work, why is it important?
Well, it's important for learning and development because it's where the real learning happens. And this is at the point I like to flip this around, because it's not really about learning and development or the topics that we provide for. It's about every worker. If you asked any worker, what does learning at the point of work mean to them, they'll look at you like where they do their learning. If you, with any deep conversation that you have about what was challenging or what did you learn today at work, you probably get something around the interactions, the situations and the challenges that face in the day-to-day. But as for learning and development, we kind of operated on the periphery, down in the 10 of the 70-20-10, then into the 20. But as for scaffolding and supporting the work itself, I think that this is not just a poignant topic for learning and development, but it's becoming a critical one.
I think so, given the pressures of work, given the pressures of time and the importance of productivity, then how else can you build that without having support at the second moment that you need it?
Well, you've mentioned there about productivity. It's no secret, many people in learning and development now in senior positions, in influential positions, are talking about the potential of learning and development to impact performance and productivity. Now, why not do that in the context of where performance and productivity actually take place, rather than just the removal? Now, I'm not advocating here throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but what I am saying is let's use the rich context and the challenges that people actually face and start looking at seeing what we can actually do there for them when these challenges actually occur.
Yeah, I get that, and I think a lot of people are beginning to get that as well, because it makes an immediate impact.
Yeah.
Let's just talk Turkey. What is it? So give me an example. I'm sitting at my desk, I have a problem. Where does this learning at the point of work occur, and how does it occur?
Okay, in the absence of learning and development, it's going to occur with your peers, with people sitting around you. It might be as obvious as a question, it might be as tacit as an observation, it might be role modelling. Beyond our colleagues, it might be a Google search. But what it's about is I'm doing my work now. And again, let's take this from the perspective of the worker. I'm doing my work now and something's come up. I wouldn't mind a bit of support. I'll ask my colleagues for something contextually relevant, and I'll go to Google for something that might be around something more technical or perhaps from the outside. But when we think about learning and development's role here, and what and perhaps what is missing is a lot of the stuff that branches from, well, how does stuff get done here in the absence of your peers, in the absence of a system or an infrastructure where people feel supported in their work? That's where learning and development can really operate. But as well as the what and the who, one of the more important aspects of point of work is the when. If we can catch people as their minds and eyes are wide open and they're facing the challenges for the first time.
They're really interested and motivated at that moment.
Exactly. We don't have to worry about engaging our learners. We have got our workers, and that's where we can both shape and form their how they actually do the work, how they think about doing the work, and some of the results that they can.
What do you do then with companies? They invite you in and say, talk to me about this. What do you do? Do you put in software? Is it state of mind? Do you get them to write stuff down? How do you build that rich environment that helps people at the point of work?
Right, the first thing we need to do is not talk about technology. We have to talk about real problems. So, my role is to understand from a client what is being experienced, they understand to be a problem, and where's the data. Now, we don't have to go down that path. We can get our hypothesis from elsewhere. But if we really want to get down to the point of work and solve real problems for people at the point of work, then if we can get some data, then that's really going to help us. Otherwise, our hypothesis can form from usual learning and development initiatives, such as induction or I say new manager development. If we take that as a route and just explore for a moment, what is the problem there? What is the business problem that the new management development, or the absence of it, or perhaps the what's lacking in it, is actually affecting? Then what we want to do is, once we've got a hypothesis that we can back up with just a modicum of data, we need to go speak to some of these people. And what we want to get round to is, what are you trying to do and what are you not able to do in the context of learning to become a manager that we can support with? And I can tell you, Nigel, as you would well know as well, is what you get back from that is eye-opening, and largely nothing that you would guess from when you're considering this from a topic and a program perspective. When it comes down, and we know the stories, we know what we'd like to immerse people in if they're a new manager, but the nuts and bolts of becoming a manager is almost completely different on the front line, and that's the opportunity with the point of work.
Right, let's get down to the nitty. We've got down to the specific. Let's get even more specific. Yeah. Case study. Give me an example of before and after in a specific organisation.
Okay, well let's talk about so within an organisation, and we've recognised that management development is an area. All I'd say, so without naming names in organisations, I'd say that this isn't replacing a management development program. This is solving a problem that we largely have in organisations, which is our management population, our new management population, are largely neglected. They come on a program, a formal program, weeks, months, maybe even years after they become a manager, and yet they look after the biggest population in our organisation. They are a huge risk. So what is it that we can do to start supporting them from the moment they are appointed a manager? How can we give them the answer to the question, and which, this comes out all of the time, what does it mean to be a manager here? Like, you can't Google that, because that's different in every organisation, and that's why culture is such a big piece for learning and development, as well as organisations, because the context of the environment, as well as the job role, is just as important. So what does it mean to be a line manager?
So you're having those conversations.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just pulling out. So when we're talking with recently appointed managers, we are recognising with them the questions, the situations, and the challenges that they face right from the outset, so that we can create experiences, both offline and online, that get to them when and how they need it. So it's where they are, both in terms of which device or environmentally where we can catch them, where it could be important, but situationally as well, where it's absolutely critical that if we can get to them while this is still a challenge, we can help them through the first time they do this, we can shape the way that they're even thinking about becoming a manager and growing as a manager.
So it's the reverse, really, of going out doing analysis. What you're actually starting with is not the learning or the competence gaps. You're looking at the problems.
Yes.
So you're focused on what stops you doing your job well.
Yep.
What do you need to know more of? When do you need to know it? And you start from solving those problems and building some kind of infrastructure that can help people deal with the issues at the moment when those issues come up. Because I guess what you find is that one person's challenges are pretty much like another person's challenges.
So predictable.
Pretty much like another person's challenges. And yet many organisations, the same problem is solved by each person individually, uniquely, with no overlap, no sharing, and that makes a huge waste of time and effort. And it also makes the job less satisfactory, because you're stopping all the time to do something which someone around you knows what to do. So it's really pooling that expertise and creating an environment where you've got an issue, I know where to go to find an answer.
And it also comes to you, Nigel. And that's
Yes.
the power of technology
That is
today,
true.
that we can get that to you. We can surface that to you when and where you need it, and not just rely on you going to a platform. You know, we're talking about technology that exists today, that it can be automated. You can create workflows that automate it, have this stuff pop up as and when it's required, use data to make sure that you're getting to people when and how they need it, and then iterate. But we're not talking about, as I said, we're not talking about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, replacing everything you've got. This fills gaps where there is currently a lack of provision, and just stick some stuff out there that helps to solve the problem. Not an exhaustive program, stick some stuff out there, some resources, some content, and some experiences, some conversations that help to move the needle. And this is where it's important, because we're not just throwing stuff out there for engagement purposes. If you've started with data, then you can see how you're moving the needle.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And people will love you for that, because you're solving problems.
Exactly, it's a real
You're
problem.
it is a real problem.
Yeah.
And I can't believe, in a way, that we're having this conversation now and not 5 years ago or more, because this is the thing that will make the biggest difference quickest. Yeah, I'm right, aren't I?
Absolutely.
Makes huge impact.
Yes.
David, that was a real insight, and I hope people are taking note. Learning at the moment of work. It's really important. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm here with two trailblazers from RPC who are looking at artificial intelligence. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're pleased to be here.
Absolutely. I'm Em Winslow. I'm a Learning and Development Executive at RPC.
I'm Ginny Paulson. I'm the Senior Learning and Development Manager at RPC.
Great. So very excited to hear about the work that you're doing with artificial intelligence. Can you tell me a bit more about the technology? What is it and how does it work?
Sure, so I guess we'll give you a bit of context to start with. So every year we recruit a team of trainees to join us, and each trainee will spend 6 months in 4 different departments. And we were finding that although they had some brilliant face-to-face training at the beginning for each department, when they move, they're not doing the law for that particular area. So they were forgetting the law that they'd learnt. And we were discussing it with one of our friendly lawyers called Jonathan Wells, who's an expert in a bunch of legal rules called the Civil Procedure Rules, which are designed to help courts run smoothly. And we were just discussing how could we make it fun, how could we make it engaging, how could we keep people wanting to learn more. And that's when we met Elephants Don't Forget. And their tool allows you to fill it with multiple choice questions, which our colleague Jonathan kindly wrote for us. And the idea is that every day as a trainee you would receive 2 emails into your inbox. You open up the email, there's a little timer, you get multiple choice questions to answer, and then you can see your own score and your peer group score. So the fun for us is that lawyers are very competitive. So we had a team of new trainees, a team of second year trainees, and it got really popular. And we then had a team of lawyers who also wanted to play. So we were able to sort of play off the different groups against each other. And we found that the engagement with the tool really helped boost our accuracy rates of legal knowledge.
Amazing. So going viral by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it got incredibly
Absolutely.
competitive and popular.
It did, yeah.
Amazing. And you mentioned Elephants Don't Forget. How does the relationship with them work? How does that play out?
Sure, so we're their client, I guess, basically. So they own the technology and the IP around the software. We wrote the questions, so we own the questions, and we can fill Nelly, which is the shorthand name for the tool, with any multiple choice questions that we like. So we found it to be very successful with legal knowledge, and we're considering it actively for different projects as well.
So it sounds like we said, it went a little bit viral. What was the reaction from the organisation to the tool?
I think there is a lot of excitement around it because it is a fairly new kind of way of learning that we've kind of adopted, and with things moving in the learning world, it is moving towards more gamification, and especially for our trainee population and some of our paralegals who are taking part, it just seemed like the perfect kind of solution to embed that learning and make that learning stick. Yeah, but in essence, the reaction was great. Lots of partners were kind of singing its praises, and some of them got involved and got very competitive as well. So the reaction overall has been fantastic.
I think the secret for us, because it was new, we wanted to do it very collaboratively, and we're a collaborative firm. So we build it as this is a pilot to all of the groups which are playing. We launched it with a big fanfare. We had cakes with the logo on it, and it was very discursive, and we sent lots of emails around about how people were doing and how each group was doing against each other. And people would sometimes email saying, "Oh, I have my question today, when is it coming?" So people got very impassioned about it.
Yeah.
So some real demand for it then?
Yes, definitely.
Fabulous. And what sort of results are you seeing after putting the tool in?
Yeah, so with our pilot group, we ended up seeing in phase 1 of the questions 18% increase in knowledge, which is fantastic. And then in phase 2, actually, when the questions get a little bit harder for those taking part, we saw a 23% increase of knowledge, which is fantastic. And the engagement has been high throughout as well. And with the email prompts, as Ginny mentioned, that really gets people going and kind of looking at the scores.
Yeah.
And with our current kind of group, phase 1, we've already got a 23% increase in knowledge, and the phase 1 hasn't ended yet. So that's a fantastic result. Yeah,
I think what's interesting for us is that behind the scenes, Nelly's got great data and reporting ability, and in terms of return on investment, for us, that was very important to be able to clock. And it's one of the few pieces of learning and development you can actually measure properly with return on investment stats. And we were looking at the graphs, and you can see a definite correlation between engagement rates and accuracy of score. So we've been able to prove to ourselves and our firm that this is really a very valuable tool for us.
Absolutely. So the results speak for themselves. You can't argue with that.
No, exactly.
In terms of before you got the results, this sounds quite new and quite innovative to me. I can see in some businesses that being quite a challenge to sell in. How did you tackle that challenge? How did you get buy-in to try this?
It was mainly networking, I think, internally to start with, finding lawyers who are very impassioned about their subject particularly. We're well aware that after face-to-face training, the knowledge level drops off very quickly. So when you start using that kind of language, they start to see that the hour that they face-to-face with a lawyer is valuable. Actually, they lose quite a lot of the benefit that they've got. So when we were talking about spaced learning, repetition, they started to buy into that. So it took some time to network, quite a lot of coffee. Em and I had together with quite a few lawyers to get people willing. And then it was just a question of the people who are leading the trainees. We needed to tell them as their manager it was happening. And we had quite a few emails from the bosses of the trainees going, "Oh, that sounds great, can I play too?"
It sounds like the majority of it has gone absolutely swimmingly. Did you face any challenges? And if so, what were they?
I suppose one of our learns has been around testing it around IT, because although Elephants is obviously a very bust tool IT-wise, we didn't know what it would be like with our firewalls. So one of the challenges we faced was to make sure we vigorously tested it, which we did actually on us as a team, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Great. And if you were to give some advice to someone who was starting out on this journey of artificial intelligence, what would that be?
What would you say, Em?
I think go for it, because it's proving that it's working for us with using with any tool, artificial intelligence tool. Make sure you test it. Test is the key, and just have fun with it, because once you get it all set up and going, everyone's loves it and is super engaged. So yeah, it's been fantastic for us to be involved with Clever Nelly, and those taking part absolutely love it.
And I think the other thing we did that made a difference is we put some multiple choice trivia questions in there just for fun. And we wrote some, we had up some players in Hong Kong and Singapore, so we did some trivia questions about different parts of the country, different parts of the world, just to showcase that it was a whole firm game, and people got as competitive with the legal questions as they did with the trivia. So I think just having fun with it, playing with it, launching it well and in a compelling way is the key.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get it. It's a series of multiple choice questions. Where's the artificial intelligence in the tool?
So Clever Nelly looks at the questions for each user and which question categories you're doing well at, which maybe you might have a development area in, and it sends you the one that you have a development area in, and lessens the questions which you're strong at. So it decides which questions to send you. If you engage less with it, it will send you more questions. So to any of our users, we've encouraged them to engage as much as possible and stay on top of the questions. But really it tailors it to your learning needs, and provides you that kind of personal learning experience using the tool.
And level, it's been great for us because although we have the personalisation for the individual users, the reporting can show you the areas overall how well your population's doing on particular subjects. So we've been able to notice where we don't need to do any more training. We've also been able to notice where we do need to do some more training. So it helps us also with our learning and development strategy for that population as well.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Em. Thanks, Ginny.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing with us today about the artificial intelligence tool Clever Nelly. We'll be welcoming our new presenter, Ewan Semple, who will be talking about technology and learning in his new regular slot. And this time, he'll be covering how he uses technology to connect people.
Hi there. I was very chuffed when Colin asked me to contribute to Learning Now TV with a 5-minute slot on technology. And when he first asked me, I went into all the different thoughts of what I could talk about, artificial intelligence, blockchain, AI. There's so many technological issues affecting people in the workplace these days, and especially around this subject of learning and how we learn. But I then thought, well, really, let's start from the basics and start from where individually we can use technology to greater effect for our learning. And that's why I'm sitting here in my car recording this video. This is where I do an awful lot of my learning. To reassure any health and safety folks out there, I'm clearly not driving at the moment. But when I am driving, as many of you will know, the experience and the practice of driving just gets you into a different state of mind. In some ways a more receptive state of mind, less distractions, clearly beyond the need to keep an eye on the road and what's happening. But I find it a very productive place to absorb information. And especially nowadays that I can listen to podcasts and audiobooks, non-fiction audiobooks principally. And so the main way that I learn and keep ahead of my subjects is by listening to people chasing the same topics and becoming informed about those topics through listening to conversations. We'll come back to this, I'm sure, in other podcasts or other talks, but I think the idea of learning through conversations is itself important. I'm not consuming content. I'm listening to people working things out, and I think that's quite a big difference in how we learn. So as I say, I'm able to do this when I'm driving and find it very productive to do so. While listening to these podcasts or audiobooks, they'll trigger ideas. They'll trigger ideas of things that I maybe need to do, or content for maybe something I'm going to write, or a podcast, or a keynote that I'm going to deliver. And when I think of those things to do, I'm able to raise my hand. As you can see, I have an Apple Watch. In fact, I have just triggered Siri by doing this. But I'm able to communicate with Siri and dictate ideas that I want to capture, either things to do or ideas for future content that I'm going to create. And I've got longer form tools like just press record, which allows me to record long ideas if I want to, and that gets transcribed later anyway. But the point is that I'm able to stimulate thinking, absorb thinking, other people's thinking, and then do something with it easily and painlessly. And I think that is key as we move forward in learning and helping people to learn, is acknowledging that increasingly it's little in our hands. We have the tools and the access to all sorts of clever and smart people in all sorts of topics wherever we are. And that will then begin to inform how we see our corporate systems, our corporate tools, our business tools, which at the moment, frankly, are very conventional, very staid, very constrained, very moulded around the ideas of our organisations, our boundaries, our hierarchies, our roles, whatever. And also highly commercialised. There's a lot of money spent on systems that, frankly, sometimes I think are over-engineered and overpriced. And the potential for us to use networks of smarter people using smarter tools is just going to become more and more obvious. Especially going back to the bigger topics of AI and automation. As more of our processes and systems within our businesses become automated and become depersonalised, if you like, then the USP of the people is to think harder and share better, which is why we come back to these tools. And also topics I'm keen that we cover in these 5-minute slots are the issues around ideology. What behaviours, what values, what priorities are being coded into our corporate systems, and by whom? So already, this sort of our sense of the world around us comes to us invariably through Google or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. And what appears in our feeds is determined by algorithms, and those are written by small groups of people with a particular perspective. That is going to become true in our businesses. What we decide is important, who we decide is important, what knowledge we value, what learning we prioritise, that is going to be built into systems increasingly. So I feel very strongly and passionately that we need now to be more thoughtful about what we do with those systems, who does with those systems as well. So back to the reason for doing the podcast, the recording this way, is just that it's about personal information, about personal connections, about personal tools that we then integrate into the business environment. And doing so well, I think, is increasingly important and something that people in the learning environment could be helping with and helping to steer. So those are the sort of topics that I'm hoping to cover in these little 5-minute slots. Certainly excited by those topics myself, and hopefully you will be too. And I look forward to seeing you the next time on Learning Now TV.
People have got to have a far broader vision than they've ever had in the past, and that's something that's got to be developed all the way through the organisation.
It's very important to create learning experiences that are social, that are collaborative, and adapted to a real-world context.
Although this programme is going out later in March, it's actually being recorded on International Women's Day. And we didn't want to let that event pass without acknowledging the fantastic contribution of women in learning. So we've worked with Sharon Claffey-Calliope, and she has coordinated a whole series of video reports from women from all over the world to celebrate their contribution to learning. And after Sharon's initial points, we're going to run a little mashup, just some extracts from some of those really fantastic videos which you can see online if you want to look at more than we can show on this programme. So my first question, Sharon, is an obvious one. Why did you get involved?
Seems to be a real important issue with where women are standing in the learning and development field, and just plain in learning. Through the years, we've gotten some statistics, and similar to women in business, it's been a little bit lopsided. There are some stats we can reference to, and we'll make sure to share. But initially, it was 3 highly rated from university or college women going into the workforce in learning, or even academically in college and university being, top A students. And then as they progress in their career, it's 3 women, top star students, university leaders, to every 1 man. However, when it comes to the leadership roles within learning and within the profession, it flips, and it's almost every 2 or 3 women in lower level jobs to every 1 man. And I think that needs to be addressed, need to be made aware of it.
My top tip for women in learning is to engage, educate, and empower. Engage with other women at online forums, conferences, events. Educate new women coming into the learning profession. Share with them your tips and best practices. And then also you can learn from others that are senior. So educate. Lastly, empower. Empower women in learning.
My top tip for women in learning is that we are in an industry that loves to share, loves to help people. So everyone around you in the industry is already predisposed to help you. So find a champion and build your personal learning network.
So my top tip is to make your voice heard and take control of your own narrative. It's a noisy world, and there's plenty of people who will try to do it for you.
To be successful, I think the one thing you can do is plan. Build up a nest egg to give yourself the runway to try and do the one thing you want to do. I did this when I took time off to write my ebook and haven't looked back. And my top tip for women in learning is speak up. Be clear, ask for questions, ask for help, and don't listen to imposter syndrome, even when it is scary as hell.
Be yourself. Accept yourself. All of your strengths, recognise them. All of your weaknesses, be aware of them. Be bold, be brave. You've got nothing to lose.
So I would say top tip for being successful in learning is to accept that, but know and celebrate and build on your strengths as an individual, and also recruit or borrow to your weaknesses, and just that way you can just take advantage of every situation that you find yourself in.
Top tip for women in learning: sort out your own stuff, your inadequacies, your fears, and your willingness to shine. You are special, and you're also wonderfully normal. Keep that in perspective. You will stand yourself in good stead and those around you in good stead. Be kind. If you have a position, use it wisely and support those with less voice.
My top tip is think big and beyond. Take inspiration from all aspects of everyday life. What I've noticed is the best ideas tend to come from the most unusual experiences and places. Bring creativity and energy.
My top tip is always ask for help. Even if you think the questions you're asking might seem really trivial, or perhaps you feel like you should already know the answer to them, just ask for help and get, peer review for things. Use other people to help you.
My top tip is basically to be crystal clear about what your values are. And that sounds a bit wishy-washy, but I think it's critical to make sure that you know why you're doing what you're doing, to stay focused, to prioritize, and to stay true to yourself.
My top tip in a sentence is always be recognised for your successes and for the efforts that you have made in your role. Support others, but always aim to get recognition for what you've achieved, and don't hide that.
My top tip is to get outside your comfort zone. So being uncomfortable is a great stimulus for learning and development.
So my top tip for women in learning is to invest in your own learning and also know about your end customer, how the programs you create make an impact. And my top tip for being successful is to know your strengths and leverage them.
And why is women in learning important to you?
In a way, I grew up in a time when women were being told what they could not do versus what they could do. And it was just part of the nature starting from probably kindergarten, when I'm playing in the playground and I'm playing with the boys. I didn't want to sit in the corner or skip rope. I wanted to play with the trucks, play with the sports. And I can remember my sister and mother riding their bikes by saying, "What are you doing there? Why are you there? Go try to play with the girls." And it just, it was always a separation. And as I evolved through university and really looked at certain things, it's funny, my mother and sister really were the ones that pushed me, along with my playing with my brother and my dad, supporting it, getting into activities that weren't seen as female or women's, doing sports. I can remember having to cut jeans into shorts so that I could play basketball, being positioned on a boys' soccer team because there were not any girls' teams, believe it. And not long ago, 70s, 80s, this didn't exist. Really putting myself in the place where people said, you can't do it. Being on the first softball teams where we just got t-shirts versus uniforms, and then progressing into high school and college where I picked up the sport of fencing and was told that women were only allowed to do one weapon, because that being foil, there's foil, saber, épée, because girls might get hurt if we do the other. That evolved into the early 90s, where we were actually the first women team allowed to fence saber, and we were the gold medal winners, a collaborative group in New England out of the United States to win the gold medal in that area.
What did you learn when you assembled this package for us?
I learned that other women care. we purposely, there's a question, who helped you progress through your career? And I remember my experience and calling up my trusted colleagues that I could around the world saying, gosh, it doesn't feel like a glass ceiling to me. It feels like a glass slipper. Women tend to be blocking my progression. Why is that? Why aren't we supporting each other? I received an article out of Harvard Business Review actually explaining that there's a reason some women in professions feel like there's only room for one. We have to get beyond that. And the one thing I learned is other women want that too. So what you're seeing in that video and those clips and what we're going to continue in this movement is we're the women helping each other move along. And that's what I gained is like, wow, there is a massive network of amazing young ladies, women, and seasoned professionals. And we really want to pull the industry along, pull women in learning along, and get to that further point. And that was my biggest gain. My biggest pleasure was seeing all these women grouping together, and even the chatter and preparing for it and getting over our anxiety of putting ourselves on camera doing it. Even this interview is a little nerve-wracking, but you want to do it for the sake of women in learning.
What do you hope the outcomes will be, short term and longer term?
The outcomes that we're hoping to get from #WomenInLearning is, I use this even in the creation of learning solutions, is engage, educate, and empower. And it's that empowerment that we really need to do to other women and to try to move them along in their career, have us all learning. Women in learning can be almost in any profession where you're willing to learn at any age, any location, and really group together and say, enough is enough. The stats cannot keep getting worse. We need to do something about it. And #WomenInLearning is about the creation of engagement, awareness, education of what we can do, and key component, empowerment.
Having done it once, is this something that you'll do again?
I mean, not the women in learning part, but I'm a woman, I'm in learning. How do we stop? And as a group, how does this evolve? How do I champion the other women? Great experience with Kate Graham at Learning Technologies, other folks at Elliott Macy's Learning 2000, whatever year it is. We need to empower the other women to do what we're doing and keep the conversation going. And that's what I'm looking to do, is to keep this going, maintain the conversation so that in a number of years we can do what they're doing in sports even. The women gold medal team, first time they allowed it in the Olympics was the USA. We felt like really proud that we were involved. Many other things around the world are moving in this direction. We want to look in the rearview mirror and say, we've gone beyond it. We're improving, we're present, we're equal with the folks that have empowered us along, which many, if not all in my experience, have been men. And we want to get beyond where the women are arm in arm, and we're moving and we're together as women in learning. #WomenInLearning.
Have you any final thoughts, and who helped you pull all of this together?
I'd really like to thank those that were involved, that took the time to, even if they couldn't get the recording out, they engaged in the conversation, they shared with others. StoryTagger is a technology that we're using. Cheryl Clemens worked hand in hand on this, and I only met her because of this involvement and kind of speaking with you, Nigel, to thank Kate Graham, to thank all the women that have been in the learning panels, send off to Martha Soren, that I feel she's really led the way as a woman senior leader, and I could name so many others. And maybe that's what we start to do. We start pointing out and naming others. I also know we may get QStream, which is another technology. Companies are volunteering their technology to move this initiative forward. So if you want to get involved, let's keep this going. Let's keep the mantra going. But thanks to everyone, Nigel, including yourself, Donald Taylor, other companies that have supported this, Filtered, QStream, StoryTagger, and any other women companies that can get noticed, awareness, and let's move it forward.
Sharon, it's been a huge pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for pulling together a whole string of contributions from women in learning.
Thanks, everyone.
Pitching our leadership course recently, the response was, we get it. You're not about teaching a few leadership techniques, you're about transforming the organisation. And that's right. Imagine an organisation where people are energised and motivated by being in control of what they do. Imagine they're trusted and given freedom to absolutely work at their best. Imagine they have managers who coach them rather than tell them what to do. Wouldn't you like to work in that environment? That's what we can help you create through our leadership programs to develop the skills and through our consultancy to help you with your processes and the things you need to change. That's Happy. We can help you create a truly happy, productive workplace.
Robin Hoyle, our contrarian, is back. He always says something controversial, and this time he's rating the lack of slack in the system. Everyone schedules everything from the beginning to the end of the day, end of the week, end of the year. So there's no time to reflect, no time to think, no time to extract the learning. So Robin talking about, come on, give us a bit of slack.
I was reading an article by Oliver Berkman in one of the Sunday supplements recently about scarcity. And it starts in an arresting way with a mathematical model. And somebody's taken the time to work out that actually if you have one person as a bank teller in a counter in a branch, and a new customer comes in every 10.3 minutes, but each transaction takes 10 minutes, then eventually the queue will achieve a steady state. But that steady state, neither going up nor down, will be a 5 hours waiting time. Now that's quite astonishing for anybody who's not travelled through Manchester Airport to get back into the country at passport control recently, but believe me, that seems perfectly reasonable if you have. Now, what Berkman also says, though, is that that same mathematical model says if you put one more member of staff on, then the steady state for waiting time is down to 3 minutes. So scarcity and building some slack into the system is not a nice thing to do. It's essential if we're to counteract the effects of not having sufficient resources to cope. And what Berkman goes on to say, quoting a couple of behavioural scientists, Sharif and Mulatayan, he says that scarcity captures the mind. In other words, it's an all-encompassing thought process where you are trapped in this constant cycle of worrying about the fact that you don't have enough resources. And I read that report at the same time as I was reading this. It's a recent Towards Maturity report called The Transformation Journey, written by Laura Overton, in which she identifies 11 things that concern learning and development, of which 5 are what she calls cultural resistors. In other words, there are things that people are doing culturally within organisations which seem to stop learning and development happening. And specifically, what managers and leaders are doing. Their reluctance to invest time and effort in training and development, their reluctance to try new types of learning activities. And it seems to me that I thought there could be some connection there with the scarcity. It may just be that I was reading the two things at the same time. But maybe, just maybe, most organisations and most managers and leaders would like to support learning and development, would like to support new ways of learning, but they just don't have enough slack in the system to enable them the time to do so. Now that's certainly the case with some of the organisations with which I work. And typically what we find in those organisations is that the managers and the leaders have been promoted to that leadership position because they're really good at whatever their team or department does. They are the ace project manager, the top salesperson. They are the great designers. And when they notice that things need doing which are taking a long time because there are too few resources, too few people with the skills, then what will they do? Of course, because they can see that they could do quicker, more effectively, more successfully than their team members, they roll their sleeves up. And in fact, we recognise and reward managers for doing that. Leading from the front is considered to be a good thing. But maybe if there was a bit more slack in the system, maybe if they had some more resources, then those same managers and leaders would invest time and effort in supporting the development process, even though that learning and development activity may not pay off dividends for some days, some weeks, maybe even years before we get the benefit. Because when you are facing scarcity, when you have too few resources to do the things which are needed now, it's very difficult to lift your heads up and think, medium or longer term, and investing in time and effort in learning and development activities, in innovating and experimenting and creating space to fail and space to try things out, takes time, takes resources, and it takes a focus on the future. So I think having a bit more slack in the system might be one of the ways in which we address those concerns around manager and leadership reluctance to get involved. Because if necessity is the mother of invention, maybe scarcity of resources, scarcity of time, scarcity of skills within the team is the mother of inertia.
Studies have shown that learning programs are now crucial weapons in the fight to attract and retain talent. Working closely with modern learning organisations across the globe, we have developed Learning Programs of Excellence, a prestigious award recognising exceptional, state-of-the-art learning programs. If you're a learning department or function, LPE will help you attract new talent. You'll boost your appeal as an employer by showcasing the calibre of your learning programs and development opportunities within your organisation. If you're a provider of learning, LPE gives you an absolute guarantee that your learning programs are capable of creating a lasting positive effect on performance and business outcomes. Get in touch with the Learning and Performance Institute now and begin your Learning Program of Excellence journey.
In the L&D world, we all know our biggest challenge is knowledge fade and demonstrating ROI from our training interventions. At Elephants Don't Forget, we use artificial intelligence to guarantee that what you train your employees, they learn and retain. If you are looking to transform the impact your training content has in your business, improve the ROI, and perhaps help employees learn and retain even the dull, rhetoric material, drop me a line at nelly@elephantsdon'tforget.com.
We're keeping the theme of bringing people into Learning Now television from around the world. And I'm very pleased to be able to talk to Wilhelm de Caster. Now, he is a program director for a very interesting program which we're going to talk about. But he's based at the Hahn Applied University in Nijmegen. And the program is probably unique in the world, or as far as we know, unique in the world. It's a bachelor's program in learning and development.
Yeah.
So you're turning out L&D professionals at the age of 22. Tell us how many students you have.
At the moment we have exactly 471 students.
Okay.
From today on, and 470 approximately, and at the moment we are growing. So we have full-time programs, also part-time programs. And think about, you have a youngster coming from school, is 18 years, 19 years old, thinking about what profession he wants to do. And then he comes at our school and say, I want to be an L&D specialist.
Yes.
I want to get into this profession. And I ask the students why. And they say, I like to stimulate the development of people. I'm dedicated to help them getting better. Because I learned that if people support you, you can perform outstanding.
Yes.
So they're with a specific purpose to make the world a better place, and that's
very good.
It's lovely to.
Well, at the moment, if you have that inclination, you really want to help people learn.
Yeah.
You're kind of tied to going into an education degree, which directs you into either first or second school.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in working with adults, there isn't anything apart from postgraduate programs.
Yeah,
so it feels, and you know, my belief, and I hope it's your belief too, is that there will be an increasing demand for L&D professionals as we move into an age where learning becomes more and more and more important in organisations, and you're beginning to meet that demand.
Demand is growing, and I also feel it because at the moment much organisations are a magnitude to our school. At the moment, at a semester, we have 200 projects running. It's amazing. The students are doing projects in organizations, and organizations love it because the youngsters are very dedicated to the job. They get onto demand. They are performing outstanding, and they are surprisingly good. And why? Because they are asking the questions nobody else does. They're very creative, they're very open-minded, and they're very good research-based informed. They get technology literacy, so they can find out what you need to solve problem, and they can design quite quickly. They are good in rapid prototyping, testing techniques. You don't have to wait long to get something done, but they're also profound professionals in researching the informations, analyzing the problems.
Just upskilling the profession.
Upskilling
Evidence-based professionals. People who understand a little bit about learning.
Yeah, and also about this theme. I also met it yesterday at the conference, LT. It was great to be there. It was good hosted. That there was something about lifelong development, of lifelong learning. It's a difficult concept.
It's a very difficult concept.
But
and it's becoming a big issue.
Big issue.
How do you build lifelong learning skills in people so that not only do you develop the skills they need for the job, how do you develop the skills that enable them to stay relevant for their whole working life?
Yeah, that's
big
right.
issue. And is that part of the program?
It's part of the program.
Okay.
And how we work on this theme is that we first start founding a professional identity. It starts with things like, what's your purpose? What do you want in life? What makes your heart ticking? What does your stomach feel when you're in some situations? We also have ethics in our program because you have several dilemmas in your work. From one, something has to become fast there. Yes. And you think, if we put out the time and money in this, it will not bring what the company needs. And how do you conversate with somebody? You don't want to say no, you want to give a better answer for both. There's these techniques they are learning.
I think that's
great.
It's great, but it's also applicable to any young person contemplating work.
Yeah, for me,
how do you lead an ethical life and not feel intimidated and humiliated into doing things that you're not comfortable with? So you've got lots of students. Is the medium of instruction Dutch or is it in English?
It's in Dutch, but our goal is in 3 years an international program.
Excellent.
We are cooperating with master programs in Maastricht, and we are cooperating with Nick van Dam. He's now at Madrid.
He is indeed.
Yeah, and we also trying to catch up with this leadership program in Nijmegen, the business school. And we try also to connect with all the systems. So here in England with the CIPD LPI, they have a new assessment how you stand in your LPI team, L&D team. So we know about this. We know what the ATD standard is. We know what the standards are in the world, and we are compared our program with the standards. So we're relevant. We're relevant.
Yes.
We are internationally relevant. So we want this program started within 3 years.
Well, what I want you to do is in 3 years' time, you come back and we'll launch this program on Learning Now Television.
Yeah, that
for
will be,
the world.
Yeah, that will be great.
You're going to be doing a great service for everyone.
Yeah.
So, William, thank you very much indeed for talking to me today.
It was
a pleasure
nice.
meeting you.
It's the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whoever you are, wherever you're from, you can network with professionals and experts on the award-winning DPG community.
You can choose to look at articles, videos, podcasts. You can look at comments that people have made. I find it my first stop when I'm thinking about L&D. If I have a question or I want to learn more, that's the first place I go.
Just head online and search for DPG community and sign up free today.
Another great show. Thank you for joining us. So what's happening in the next few weeks, Nigel?
Quite a lot, Gemma. First of all, there's a Training and Development Summit in Northampton. Secondly, the e-learning network have got a meeting focusing on design, and CIPD have their Festival of Work in Olympia, and Learning Technologies are holding their summer forum, first time at Excel this year.
And coming up in the next programme, we've got another packed show for you. Lots of really exciting conversations and guests. We have Charles Jennings will be joining us. And we also have a session with Steve Wheeler. And we'll have our fabulous panel of Learning and Development Trailblazers under 30.
So, see you next time.